I think you are much more simple-minded than you realize. Let me show you the picture here.
Oh, really?
This, yeah. This textbook shows, and I got all the textbooks beside me, that a human and a bird have a common ancestor, which was an amphibian. Let's see. Let me find a family tree that they show. Here, because I mentioned about the frog and the prince, okay? They have these textbooks with these charts all the time showing all these animals going back to a common ancestor. Do you believe you have a common ancestor with a strawberry, Dave?
Yes.
Okay, you're welcome to believe that. That's not science. That's a religion.
Yes, it is science.
Nobody's
It
ever seen a
absolutely is
strawberry,
science.
Dave, nobody's ever seen a strawberry produce a non-strawberry.
Kent,
You might get a bigger strawberry. Or
that's
diploid,
not
but it's
what
still a strawberry.
evolution says happens. Nothing in evolution ever says that dogs produce non-dogs. Nowhere is that said. What does that have to do with anything?
Okay, Dave, calm down. Let's take that statement. Nowhere does evolution say dogs produce non-dogs. Is an amoeba a dog?
No.
Just yes or no. Okay. Did the dog come from an amoeba?
What? They had a common ancestor.
Dave, come on, yes
They
or
had a
no.
common
Did the
ancestor.
dog come from an amoeba?
What does this
You
have to do
believe
with anything?
You're not
What does this
asking a
have to do with
question,
anything?
son.
It did not
has
come from an
everything to do with
amoeba.
everything.
No, it did not come from an amoeba. What does that matter?
Well, the charts in the book show the amoeba turning into all the creatures, including the
No,
dog.
they don't. Show me a book that shows that, Kent. No book
here we
shows
go.
that.
Let's see.
Show me anything coming from an amoeba. Is an amoeba a eukaryote?
A eukaryote simply means the cell contains a nucleus that's bound in a membrane. And I'll use the same terminology you've been using. In your simple mind, you think because they're all eukaryotes, therefore they're all related. Couldn't that not be a common design? You know, all the cars on the highway have metal in them, iron.
You're just using the exact same analogy. Why are you talking about cars? They're not biological organisms. This is not a valid analogy. You're saying that there's something designed, therefore everything is designed.
No. Adding biological ability to reproduce makes it 1 trillion times more complicated, much harder for you.
They're eukaryotes, Kent. They're all eukaryotes.
Did the protista turn to a pine tree and a human? This chart says they did. This is what kids have to learn in school. You do believe a protista became a human and a pine tree.
Over 2 billion years.
Son?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay, just admit it. If you want to believe something that dumb, that's fine.
Okay.
But don't call it science.
All you're saying is that you don't get it, so it's not true. So let's get into this. Let's get into this. Kent, we're not getting anywhere with this. You're going to take all the animals forever. Let's talk about genetics. Let's talk about genetics.
What? Somewhere for the protista to become a human, new information.
So you don't want to answer my questions, and you're just going to go on and on and on and on about protists turning into whatever you want to talk about.
I want the audience to see what a dumb religion you guys have chosen to follow.
Not a religion.
It is a religion. You believe.
No, there's no moral code. There's no social structure. There's no
imagine. Here you go. Put your name on right here. Okay. Put your name on right here. You imagine that over millions, billions of years, the protista could turn to a pine tree and a human. That's what the charts show, and that's my objection. It'd be much simpler for a skateboard.
Do you know what a paternity test is? Do you know what a paternity test is?
Here we go. 202. Alt-DV 202. You asked for, here is a tree of life used in the textbooks that shows humans and arthropods and worms coming from a single cell, sponges. Do you believe we all came from sponges, Dave? Do you believe this textbook is right? You do, okay.
Explain to me why all of the fossils, you agree that there are geological strata, yes?
I agree that there are many layers of rock on the earth. I do not agree they are different ages. I have right here, I have in our museum pictures of petrified trees standing up, connecting all these layers.
Now, call them whatever you want. I'm asking you a question. Call them whatever you want. In these layers, there are fossils, yes?
I agree.
And they are organized in a pretty particular way, yes?
The fossils are not always in that particular way. If there's any
they are essentially always in that particular order.
Then you have been lied to and you swallowed a lie.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Can you find for me a hominoid fossil in a very low layer next to a trilobite fossil? Can you find that?
That's very interesting. We have a section in our museum working on right now about trilobites living with humans all along. There might even be some.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating, though it's not based in reality.
Dave,
now you keep derailing me, so I never got to ask you my question. My question for you is that you believe that these layers were deposited during some kind of flood, as waters were draining or something like that, right?
I agree. Yeah, the layers were deposited in a flood. Okay,
so then what I want to know is, number one.
Most of them, nearly all of them. There's still layers today being deposited, but I'd say 95% of what we see was deposited during Noah's flood. Yeah.
Number one, why do the layers have zero correlation with density? Why does the density not increase as you go down? And number two, why are these fossils in those specific layers, in that specific order, everywhere around the world?
Okay, they are not in that order, but let's take one question at a time. I have in front of me a sand art toy that has 4 different densities of sand: black, dark blue, light blue, and white. 4 different densities, but every time you flip it over, it makes 30 or 40 different layers.
Why are any of those limestone or sandstone or granite, are those in there?
Dave, I'm not sure what you know about physics or hydrologic sorting, but water automatically sorts things, especially during the tidal change, during the flood in the days of Noah. The earth is turning around, you know, in spite of the flat earthers, and the tide goes up and down. And so if the earth were turning for a year while the tide's going up and down with no interruptions, it would make thousands of layers and the density would be completely confused. Generally, clams are found at the bottom.
What do you mean completely confused? What does that mean?
Well, during one tide, you would get more dense and light dense. And then 6 hours later, you get another tide coming in, bringing another layer on top of all that. So you may get more dense and less dense. Just Google stratigraphy, experiments in stratigraphy, stratigraphic experiments at Colorado, at the Navy.
So you're saying that tides exist everywhere on Earth, in every location on Earth at the same time. Is that basically what you're saying?
Well, during the flood in the days of Noah, the earth was covered and the tides would cover the world. Now, some parts of the world have a high tide while other parts have a low tide. You see?
So how can you get the same strata everywhere on Earth? Tides occur on a coast.
If the earth were covered with water during Noah's flood, tides would occur everywhere, Dave.
What do you mean they would occur everywhere? Tides occur on a coast. Tides come in and out. If the world is covered by water, where is a tide? How does a tide?
Hold it. Let me explain. Here is the Pacific Ocean. They have a high tide and a low tide in the middle of the Pacific. You don't see it because you're in a ship floating up and down. But the Pacific Ocean actually comes up and down during the tide. What do you mean tide occurs at the coast? Have you ever studied anything about earth science?
I know about lunar tides. You're talking about the depositing of sediments in a particular way.
Yeah, right. See, the world is turning. At this latitude, 31.3366 degrees north latitude in Lenox, Alabama, we're turning 886 miles an hour toward the east. If the tide were going up and down during Noah's flood, the water would have to rush sideways at really high speeds to fill that bump, and then rush down the other way at high speeds to lessen the bump.
Really high speeds? What does that have anything? How is it any different than tides today?
Okay, it's not. It's not. But the tides today get interrupted by banging into the continents. Earth turns toward the east, so the tides generally hit the eastern coast a little more because the tide is being drawn out by the moon, lunar gravity.
You're trying to ascribe some kind of magical quality to tides that doesn't exist. We see what tides do today, and we see what they do.
It's very simple. Here, look at this. I just flipped this thing over. These 4 different densities of sand made, probably 20 different layers.
And again, are any of those things sandstone or limestone or granite or anything that would be applicable to this discussion whatsoever?
I think it's pretty obvious even from the name. You might even get this. Sandstone is made from sand, okay? Sand is moved very easily when tides move back and forth. Water going back and forth.
But it's not the same material. How does it possibly compact into?
It would have to harden. It would have to harden over the next few hundred years after the flood. After Noah's flood, the layers would harden, and some of it's a chemical reaction. There are different types of sedimentary rock.
And how does this process occur magically at every location on Earth at the same time, such that the strata are the same everywhere on Earth?
Well, first, if you think the strata are the same every place on Earth, you have really been lied to in your education.
Nope.
You're the one that doesn't have an education. The strata are all different areas. And all over the world, petrified trees are found standing up connecting these strata. So how can you claim they're different ages?
Some are in volcanic ash. Some could be due to a local flood. That is not evidence against anything.
I agree. I got it. You need to watch my video number 6.
I don't need to watch any of your videos, Kent.
You didn't? I'm sorry, I
No.
didn't hear you. Did you?
I didn't, and I don't need to.
Oh, I know you didn't. It's obvious, but you need to. It would help you a lot, okay?
No, I
You really do
don't.
need to. Okay. Tell you what, I'll watch some of yours, and I'll put you on my list to whack an atheist. Are you an atheist or just an agnostic, or what are you?
I don't really feel like telling you because it's not really part of this discussion. It has nothing to do with God whatsoever, unless we want to actually talk about the Bible like I wanted to do earlier. Can we?
No, that wasn't the title of the debate. The debate was the evidence for evolution. You're claiming there is evidence
No,
for
the
evolution.
title of the debate is evolution versus creation, and the Bible is your evidence for creation.
Well, no, even without the Bible, I could say it's obvious there's a creator. I think somebody created this coffee cup. Had nothing to do with the Bible. This has a creator.
Yeah, another man-made object that has nothing to do with anything. Your argument is that a designed thing exists, therefore everything is designed. Well, I can tell you that something like a snowflake forms spontaneously, so everything forms spontaneously. Neither of those conclusions follow from the premise. They're both bad arguments. You should stop saying it, even though it's one of your favorite ridiculous things to say.
Well, it's not ridiculous. It's true. And you're not getting it, obviously. So I need to say it over and over again. I'll tell you what, most of the audience is getting it, even though you are not. It is true. Do you believe the first living cell, the first living creature on the planet, came from something that was non-living? Because I used a coffee cup, which is non-living. Do you believe the first living cell came from something non-living?
Kind of a gray area, but at some point you'd have to demarcate that. Yes.
Okay. So how did this non-living, whatever it was, soup, collection of chemicals, you can have whatever you want. How did it
you're not saying rock anymore?
Well, that's what the textbook shows, that the rocks.
Oh, no, it doesn't. But that's what you always do say. But it's interesting that you're not saying it right now because you know that
I'm going to try to get you to admit it, Dave. Now listen. Do you believe the Earth began as a hot ball of rock 4.625 billion years ago, or whatever number they're using now?
Yeah.
Okay. Did the rocks cool down, and then it rained on the rocks and produced chemical oceans containing chemical soup?
You can call it soup. I wouldn't, but fine.
Most of the textbooks call it a soup. Okay. Do you believe this soup somehow came alive? Eventually, over millions of years.
Alive. Organic molecules organize themselves into ordered systems, which eventually we can describe as life.
The living things came out of this organic molecules came from this soup, from the rocks that got rained on. Dave, you believe you came from a rock. You just admitted it and don't even know it.
No, I don't. I believe that organic molecules produce life, but you know who does believe that humans came from rocks? You do. You believe that God created Adam from dust. So you're describing your ridiculous belief.
Now,
not mine.
Let me try to explain. I'll try to explain it simply. This coffee cup is made of 100% natural materials. Okay, ceramics from the ground and stuff like that. For a man to take the materials from the ground and produce a coffee cup is understandable. For an intelligent God to take the dust and make a human, that's logical. For the dust to make itself into a human, that's not logical, Dave.